There's a machine rolling through Ukraine that shouldn't exist. Not in this war. Not in any war where everything burns. Since early 2023, Ukrainian crews have taken this vehicle into hell itself, Bakhmut's meat grinder, the killing fields outside Avdiivka, the frozen nightmare of Crimea. They've eaten anti-tank mines like speed bumps, absorbed Lancet strikes that should have vaporized them, walked away from FPV drone swarms that turned Russian BMPs into crematorium. And here's the part that makes Russian commanders lose sleep. Not a single Ukrainian soldier has died inside one. Zero. In a war where armor equals coffin, where Bradley crews limp home in smoking hulls and Soviet IFVs become mass graves on tracks, Sweden's CV90 has done the impossible. It keeps people alive. Ukrainian soldiers don't call it by its designation anymore. They call it the beast that won't die. Russian troops have a different name. They call it the Swedish demon. And when intelligence reports confirm a CV90 in the sector, entire Russian battalions shift tactics. Artillery gets redirected. Drone operators get new priorities. Kill that thing before it kills everything else. This isn't just another infantry fighting vehicle. This is a machine that's rewriting the rules of mechanized warfare in real time. A 25-ton Predator that turned one Ukrainian brigade into the most feared mechanized unit on the Eastern Front. A system so effective that NATO is now scrambling to understand what Sweden figured out 30 years ago. What you're about to hear is the autopsy of a legend being born on the battlefield. The story of how a Cold War relic from neutral Sweden became Ukraine's Iron Guardian, and why the machine that can't be killed might be the blueprint for every future war. Let's start with the number that haunts the Kremlin: 0 fatalities. Since the first CV90 crossed into Ukrainian territory in early 2023, every crew member who climbed inside one has climbed back out. In a conflict that's consumed hundreds of armored vehicles and thousands of tank crew, that's not just impressive, it's statistically obscene. One Ukrainian mechanic working on the 21st Brigade's CV90 fleet said it best: "We see them come back looking like hell itself beat them with a hammer. Scorch marks, dents, holes in the armor. But the crew, they walk out, light a cigarette, and ask when they can go back." Compare that to the alternative. The Soviet-era BMP-2, still the backbone of infantry fighting vehicles on both sides, is a death trap. Thin armor, ammunition stored right next to the crew. When an FPV drone finds one, the result is predictable. The vehicle doesn't just get disabled, it detonates. Everyone inside becomes a statistic. Ukrainian crews call BMPs mobile coffins. Russian soldiers have been filmed abandoning them before combat even starts, choosing to walk into battle rather than trust the steel box meant to protect them. The psychological damage is immeasurable. When your own vehicle terrifies you more than enemy fire, you've already lost. The CV90 flipped that equation. For the first time since this war began, Ukrainian mechanized infantry actually want to be inside their vehicle. They trust it, they depend on it, and that trust transforms how they fight. One gunner from the 21st Brigade described the moment his CV90 took a direct Lancet hit near Crimea. "Everything went white, smoke everywhere. I thought we were dead. Then the driver just kept driving. We finished the mission. When we got back and looked at the damage, we couldn't believe we were alive. But survival doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design." And the CV90's design is a masterclass in making death look away. Strip away the mystique, and what you're left with is physics and Swedish paranoia. The CV90 was born in the late 1980s when Sweden looked at NATO and the Warsaw Pact and decided it needed something that could fight both. The result was a vehicle engineered for a war that never came. But it turns out that war was Ukraine all along. The hull is layered composite armor, not the rolled steel of Soviet designs. When a shaped charge hits, it disperses energy outward rather than punching straight through. The crew compartment sits in a protective capsule, isolated from external blasts by void spaces that absorb shockwaves. Think of it as armor that breathes, flexing with impact rather than cracking. Then there's the ammunition storage. In a BMP, the rounds sit exposed right next to the soldiers. One penetrating hit, and the entire vehicle becomes a bomb. The CV90 stores its 40mm shells in compartments with blowout panels. If something ignites, the flames vent upward and outward, away from the crew. Ukrainian soldiers have filmed this happening in real time. Flames shooting out the top like a blowtorch, while the crew inside stays intact. Buttons still working, systems still functional. The vehicle's mine resistance borders on ridiculous. Its V-shaped hull deflects blasts sideways. The suspension absorbs vertical shock. One crew survived hitting 2 anti-tank mines in sequence, something that should have ripped the tracks off and crippled everyone inside. The driver later said, "It felt like driving over aggressive potholes. We kept moving." But here's where it gets darker. The CV90's survivability isn't just about absorbing hits. It's about making hits survivable, psychologically. When your vehicle refuses to die, you start fighting differently. You take risks. You push harder. You become aggressive because survival isn't a gamble anymore. It's an assumption. Russian forces haven't adapted to that mindset. They're still fighting a war where vehicles are expendable and crews are replaceable. Ukraine's CV90 operators are fighting a war where the machine is a partner, not a coffin. And that psychological edge translates into something visceral on the battlefield: lethality. Protection is half the equation. The other half is what happens when a CV90 decides you need to die. The Bofors 40mm autocannon mounted in that squat, angular turret is the mechanical equivalent of a circular saw applied to human fortifications. It fires 300 rounds per minute. Each shell weighs over 2 pounds, each one moving at 1,025 meters per second. When they hit, they don't just penetrate, they pulverize. Ukrainian gunners describe the sound as unforgettable. One compared it to standing next to an industrial shredder eating metal. Another said, "It doesn't fire, it roars." That roar has become psychologically weaponized. Russian troops dug into trenches near Kupiansk have reported hearing the CV90's cannon and abandoning positions before it even arrives. The sound alone triggers retreat. The effective range is 3 kilometers in direct fire mode, but Ukrainian crews have pushed it beyond doctrine. They've started using the autocannon for indirect fire, arcing shells over ridgelines and tree lines up to 7 kilometers away. This wasn't in the Swedish manual. It was battlefield innovation born from desperation and experience. One fire control officer explained the logic. Why wait for artillery when you can reach them yourself? We calculate the angle, adjust for wind, and put 40mm shells exactly where we need them. By the time they realize what's happening, we've already destroyed 3 positions. That versatility makes the CV90 terrifying in a way most infantry fighting vehicles aren't. It's not just an armored taxi with a gun. It's a mobile artillery piece, a direct fire platform, and an infantry support weapon all in one. Russian commanders have to plan for 3 different threats simultaneously, and by the time they figure out which one they're facing, the CV90 has already moved. But the cannon is only half the lethality equation. The other half is what the vehicle sees before it pulls the trigger. Modern war isn't fought with iron sights anymore. It's fought with sensors, and the CV90's sensor suite turns night into noon and camouflage into a bad joke. 3rd-generation thermal imaging systems give the commander and gunner independent views of the battlefield. Both stations can scan, track, and engage simultaneously. Ukrainian crews call it 4 eyes, 2 brains. While the gunner locks onto a target, the commander is already hunting the next one. The thermal resolution is sharp enough to distinguish between a human and a dog at 3 kilometers at night through smoke. One crew reported spotting a Russian sniper team trying to hide behind burning wreckage. The heat differential gave them away. 5 seconds later, they didn't exist anymore. The laser rangefinder can tag targets out to 10 kilometers, feeding instant data to the fire control computer. Wind speed, target movement, shell trajectory, all calculated faster than human thought. By the time the gunner's finger touches the trigger, the computer has already decided where the round needs to go. Hit probability isn't luck, it's mathematics. This creates an absurd imbalance. Russian vehicles, many still running Soviet-era optics, are fighting blind. They can't see what the CV90 sees, can't track what it tracks, can't engage what it's already killed. Ukrainian gunners describe it as fighting ghosts. They're out there. You know they're out there, but you can't find them until it's too late. There's a reason Russian drones keep missing CV90s. It's not luck. It's Swedish engineering weaponized into invisibility. Every Ukrainian CV90 comes wrapped in the Barracuda mobile camouflage system, a multi-layer mesh that does something extraordinary. It doesn't just hide the vehicle, it erases it from multiple spectrums simultaneously. Visual, thermal, radar, the system disrupts all of them. The outer layer breaks up the vehicle's outline, making it blend into terrain. The middle layer scatters thermal signatures, cooling the heat bloom that normally screams "tank here" to infrared sensors. The innermost layer absorbs radar waves instead of reflecting them. The result is a 25-ton vehicle that looks like empty ground. Drone operators have described the effect as maddening. They'll sweep an area where intelligence confirms CV90 positions, see nothing, then suddenly the empty field starts shooting back. By the time they realize what happened, their drone is either jammed or destroyed. Ukrainian crews have learned to exploit this advantage ruthlessly. They'll position CV90s in Overwatch, completely invisible to aerial reconnaissance, while lighter vehicles draw enemy fire. When Russian forces commit to the attack, the CV90s open up from positions the enemy didn't know existed. It's not an ambush, it's a massacre by invisible machinery. Then, there's the electronic warfare suite. The CV90's onboard EW systems can detect, identify, and jam drone control frequencies in real time. FPV drone operators trying to dive on a CV90 often find their signal cut mid-approach, the drone tumbling uselessly or flying off on its pre-programmed trajectory straight into empty ground. The laser warning receiver adds another layer. When enemy rangefinders or targeting systems lock onto the CV90, alarms scream instantly. The crew has seconds to react, deploy smoke, shift position, or fire first. That split-second warning has saved vehicles repeatedly. Russian anti-tank teams report the same frustration over and over. We lock on, then it's just smoke, and we're taking fire from somewhere else. In Ukraine's drone-saturated battlefield, being unseen isn't just tactical, it's existential, and the CV90 has turned invisibility into a weapons system. Now, put all of that together, the armor, the firepower, the sensors, the stealth, concentrate it in a single Ukrainian formation, and you get something that doesn't fight like anything else on this front. The 21st Separate Mechanized Brigade was rebuilt from the ground up as Sweden's gift to Ukraine. Not just CV90s, but an entire mechanized ecosystem. STRV-122 tanks, Sweden's upgraded Leopard 2 A5s with better armor and sensors. Archer self-propelled howitzers that can fire, displace, and disappear before counter-battery radar even locks on, and binding it all together, the CV90s, moving between armor and artillery, coordinating, communicating, surviving. This isn't a Soviet formation. It's a NATO formation, with Ukrainian blood in its veins. They operate with combined arms precision that looks choreographed. Leopards advance. CV90s provide flanking fire and infantry deployment. Archers hammer positions from 30 kilometers away, and everything talks to everything else through encrypted NATO standard comms. The Russians have never faced anything like it. Soviet doctrine assumes armored thrusts are blunt instruments. You see them coming, you mass fire, you break them. But the 21st doesn't break. It adapts mid-battle, shifting from assault to defense, to pursuit faster than Russian commanders can process. During the brutal fighting around Crimea in late 2023 and early 2024, the 21st became the hinge that held the northern front together. While other Ukrainian brigades pushed offensives in the south, the 21st absorbed massive Russian counterattacks, held terrain, and inflicted devastating casualties. Their CV90s became legendary. Russian units started refusing orders to advance into sectors where the 21st operated. Soldiers from other Ukrainian brigades call them the silent professionals. They don't brag, they don't post footage, they just kill and move on. One officer from a neighboring unit said, "When we're exhausted and falling apart, the 21st is still moving forward. It's the machines." Yeah, but it's also what the machines let them do. They trust their armor. That changes everything. That trust is the real revolution. Not just better weapons, but better confidence. Crews that fight aggressively because they know they'll survive to fight again. That psychological transformation is what the CV90 really delivered to Ukraine. And when the world saw what it delivered, everything changed. Wars don't just consume weapons, they forge industries. By 2024, the CV90's battlefield performance had triggered one of the biggest defense procurement waves in modern European history. It started quietly, 50 vehicles donated by Sweden in early 2023, a gesture that seemed almost symbolic. But those 50 machines came back from the front scorched, dented, and still running. Reports of zero crew fatalities reached defense ministries across Europe. Suddenly, every Western military wanted to know Sweden's secret. Denmark moved first. In 2024, Copenhagen poured 1.8 billion Danish kroner, roughly $264 million, into new CV90 production, specifically for Ukraine. The Netherlands followed with $400 million more. Then came the massive leap. December 2024, Sweden and Denmark signed a $2.5 billion contract with BAE Systems Hägglunds for 205 new CV9035 Mk3C vehicles, with 40 of them earmarked for Ukraine. These weren't refurbished Cold War leftovers. These were the most advanced infantry fighting vehicles ever built. AI-assisted fire control, next-generation sensors, upgraded armor packages, D-series turrets with modular weapon integration. But the real revolution wasn't happening in Sweden. It was happening in Ukraine. In August 2023, Stockholm and Kyiv quietly signed a bilateral agreement to begin local CV90 production inside Ukraine. The target, 1,000 vehicles manufactured on Ukrainian soil. Think about that. For the first time in history, a NATO standard armored vehicle would roll off Ukrainian assembly lines. Not licensed production of a simplified export model. Full specification, fully capable CV90s, built by Ukrainian workers using Ukrainian infrastructure. The factory became the strategy. Sweden wasn't just arming Ukraine, it was industrializing Ukraine's defense future. Ukrainian officials described the agreement as transformational. Instead of waiting for shipments through contested logistics chains, they could manufacture replacements, spare parts, and upgrades locally. Battle damage repair times collapsed. Crew training happened faster. Doctrine evolved in real time because the people building the machines were the same people receiving feedback from the crews using them. By late 2024, the first Ukrainian assembled CV90 components were entering service. By 2025, the pipeline was accelerating, and by 2026, the plan calls for full production capacity online. If that happens, Ukraine won't just be operating Western armor. It will be producing Western armor, joining the exclusive club of nations that manufacture their own future. That transformation terrifies Moscow, not just because of the vehicles themselves, but because of what they represent. Ukraine isn't just surviving anymore. It's industrializing survival, building the capacity to fight this war and every war after it with machinery that refuses to die. For the first time since World War II, two Western infantry fighting vehicles, the American M2 Bradley and the Swedish CV90, are fighting side by side under the same flag. And naturally, Ukrainian crews started comparing. The Bradley is a legend. Desert Storm immortalized it. Crews love it. But when you put it next to a CV90, the differences become stark. The Bradley weighs 28 tons, packs heavy armor, and feels like a tank that carries infantry. The CV90 weighs 23 to 25 tons, moves like a predator, and feels alive in ways the American design doesn't. Ukrainian crews describe the contrast bluntly. One said, "The Bradley is a workhorse, reliable, tough, gets the job done. The CV90 is a hunting animal. It moves different, reacts different, kills different. That difference shows in terrain. The CV90 was designed for Sweden's Arctic swamps and forests, soft ground, mud, snow. Ukraine's eastern front is the same nightmare, where the Bradley sometimes bogs down or struggles through churned mud. The CV90 just keeps gliding. The extra road wheel, the transmission tuning, the suspension geometry, it's all built for the exact kind of hell Ukraine offers. Then there's the bite. The CV90's 40mm Bofors autocannon hits significantly harder than the Bradley's 25mm Bushmaster. One gunner said, "When we hit something, it disintegrates. When the Bradley hits something, it dies. Both work, but ours is faster." That extra punch matters against fortifications, light armor, and urban structures. The 40mm just erases problems. But the Bradley carries a trump card the CV90 doesn't. TOW anti-tank missiles. That standoff range, up to 4 kilometers with modern TOW-2 variants, gives the Bradley a reach the CV90 can't match without external weapons. In open terrain, where long-range precision kills matter, the Bradley's missile capability is unmatched. The real gap, though, is survivability. The CV90's Barracuda camouflage system makes it nearly invisible to thermal and radar sensors. The Bradley, for all its armor upgrades, still glows hot under enemy optics. Russian drones hunt Bradleys. They search for CV90s. In practice, Ukrainian brigades that operate both have learned to use them together. Bradleys for standoff missile kills and heavy assault. CV90s for rapid maneuver, close fire support, and stealth operations. It's not competition, it's complementary lethality. But there's one question nobody in NATO wants to ask out loud. If you could only have one, which would you choose? Ukrainian crews who've operated both tend to pause before answering. Then, quietly, most of them say the same thing. The CV90, because it brings us home. The CV90s in Ukraine today aren't the final form. they're just the beginning. The newest variant, the CV9035 MK33C, represents a leap into a future where machines don't just follow orders. They anticipate them. AI-assisted fire control systems now handle calculations that used to require human judgment. Target velocity, wind drift, ammunition type, terrain angle, all processed in milliseconds. The system doesn't just help the gunner aim, it predicts where the target will be by the time the round arrives. Hit rates have spiked. One crew reported an 87% first round hit percentage at ranges over 2 kilometers. That's not marksmanship, that's machine learning applied to murder. The CITV system, Commander's Independent Thermal Viewer, has evolved into a mast-mounted sensor platform that can peek over cover without exposing the vehicle. The CV90 can sit behind a ridgeline, raise its sensors like a periscope, scan the battlefield, and engage targets without ever presenting a profile. Russian forces have reported being killed by vehicles they never saw, not because of camouflage, but because the CV90 never had to expose itself to shoot. Integration of Spike LR2 anti-tank guided missiles is in final testing. That adds 5-kilometer precision strike capability against heavy armor. Combined with the autocannon's close-range lethality, it means the CV90 can engage anything from infantry to main battle tanks across every meaningful combat range. Then comes the Iron Fist active protection system, Hard Kill. That means incoming rockets and missiles get intercepted mid-flight by explosive countermeasures, not deflection, not evasion, destruction. If testing succeeds and operational integration happens, CV90s will become nearly unkillable against anything short of direct artillery hits. The Swedish and Ukrainian engineers aren't just upgrading specifications. They're building an ecosystem where the vehicle learns from every engagement, shares data across the network, and evolves its own tactics. Networked CV90s can coordinate fire, share targeting data, and execute complex maneuvers without human coordination. They're becoming a swarm intelligence. By 2026, Ukraine is expected to field between 100 and 150 CV90s of various marks, each newer batch incorporating lessons from the previous one. Each generation smarter, more lethal, harder to kill. This isn't procurement, it's battlefield Darwinism accelerated to industrial speed. In September 2025, something extraordinary happened that most people missed. Switzerland approved Ukraine's entry into the CV90 User Club, the exclusive consortium of nations that operate, maintain, and co-develop the platform. Membership means access to shared logistics networks, spare parts pipelines, technical documentation, and most importantly, input on future development. Ukraine isn't a client anymore. It's a partner, a nation that operates NATO-grade equipment, and now helps decide how that equipment evolves. Ukrainian combat experience is being fed directly back into Swedish and European defense planning. Lessons from Bakhmut are shaping designs for vehicles that won't enter service until 2030. That integration represents something profound. For decades, Eastern European nations transitioning away from Soviet equipment had to beg, borrow, and make do with hand-me-down Western armor. Ukraine skipped that phase entirely. It went from Soviet junk to co-developing next generation Western systems in less than 3 years. President Zelensky captured the transformation in a single sentence, standing beside Swedish defense officials. Everything powerful that serves us now, we must localize and produce. That wasn't a request, it was a declaration. Ukraine isn't waiting to be saved by Western shipments anymore. It's building its own salvation. One factory, one CV90. One trained crew at a time. The CV90's success in Ukraine has triggered a cascade nobody anticipated. Poland, already operating Leopard tanks and considering CV90 procurement, is watching closely. The Baltics, always paranoid about Russian aggression, are asking if they should transition their fleets. Even NATO's heavy hitters, France, Germany, the UK, are quietly studying what makes the Swedish design so resilient. Because in the end, the CV90 proves something that defense procurement offices have argued about for decades. You don't need the most expensive system. You don't need the flashiest specifications. You need something that works, keeps working, and keeps your people alive. Everything else is secondary. So what happens when a single weapon system rewrites the rules of an entire war? The CV90 didn't just survive Ukraine, it transformed Ukraine. It turned protection into a weapon, precision into dominance, Western engineering into Ukrainian instinct. Every hit it absorbed and kept moving. Every crew that walked away from what should have been death. Every kilometer gained with 0 losses. Each one whispered the same verdict to anyone paying attention. The age of expendable armor is over. What replaces it is something sharper, smarter, more ruthless. Machines that don't just absorb punishment, they learn from it, adapt to it, and use it to kill harder next time. Systems that turn survival into an offensive capability, because when your crews stop fearing death, they start hunting it. Russian commanders now plan entire operations around a single question. Are there CV90s in the sector? If yes, tactics shift. Artillery gets redirected. Drones get new priorities. Infantry advances get delayed. One vehicle type, just one, has that kind of gravitational pull on Russian decision-making. That's not firepower. That's psychological dominance, weaponized. And as the production pipelines accelerate, as Ukrainian factories start rolling out their own units, as the next generation of AI-assisted, missile-equipped, active protection-enhanced CV90s enter service, one question echoes across every battlefield from the Donbass to the Baltics. If one Swedish beast can do this much alone, what happens when there are hundreds of them? Russia doesn't have an answer. NATO is still writing theirs. And Ukraine is building it, one armored hull at a time, in factories that didn't exist 2 years ago. The CV90 isn't just a vehicle, it's a message written in steel and survival. The message is simple: we will not burn, we will not break, and we will not stop. What's your take on the CV90's performance compared to other Western IFVs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this deep dive into modern mechanized warfare was valuable, hit subscribe. We're bringing you more battlefield analysis that goes beyond the headlines into the machines, tactics, and people shaping modern conflict. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.